All right. Woo. Back on track. Welcome to the Brown Bag Podcast. I'm really excited to have my co-host Pedro Reynoso with us today and Erica Sanchez and Diana Rueda, who are here to talk about Chabot and everything that we're doing to support our undocumented students. And we're going to get into that in just a moment, but per our usual, if you'd like to just maybe introduce yourself and then also share something that's giving you life these days, something that is a bright spot in your life. And anybody can start.
I can go. Diana Rueda. I am the Dream Center coordinator here at Chabot College. Something that's giving me life this week of recent is listening to a podcast or anything related to Gabor Mate. He is a physician, but he's also, I think, a psychologist. So, and I think that right now, because we're going through so much constant little trauma that is connected to the big T, right? Big trauma. I think that that's been really helping me to put me into perspective on how to be more of a like processing your trauma than reactive to it. And I think that I'm going to start reading his books too. So, and I'm not a big book reader, but I think that I got some motivation from him, especially because, we're all going through it right now. And I think that's important for me. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to interject just to give you a couple of plugs. Do you have Spotify by chance?
Yes.
If you have a Spotify membership, you can listen
Yes.
to audiobooks.
Yeah.
So his book might be on there as an audiobook that you can listen to since you like podcasts instead of having
I'm gonna
to
do
read.
that. Yeah, because I don't know what it is. I know some people prefer the physical book. I can't do that. I prefer to like hear or
Yeah.
read it on the pad.
Well, you all know I'm going to plug in the libraries, right? So check out your public library first. They have Libby or some sort of,
Yes.
ebook download. But yeah, definitely. Also the print books, yeah, if you're a fan of those as well. But yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah,
A good
Libby is
choice
the
too.
best.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna look
Libby.
into that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll introduce myself next. Erica Sanchez, she, her, her pronouns, HSI director. I'll also just plug with Libby. I've gotten onto so many different library memberships because they also have audiobooks that you can check out there. So yeah, major plug to all the book readers. Something that's bringing me joy this week. I'm a really huge fan of sci-fi, fantasy, kind of dystopian, Afrofuturism, all of those things. And I've really enjoyed Severance, the show, and Wheel of Time. And so Severance just finished season 2, and Wheel of Time is in the middle of it right now. And it's a nice little escapist, thing to do. So that's what's bringing me joy this week.
Yeah, I'll go next. Pedro Reynoso, my official title, Outreach and Instruction Librarian here at Chabot College, and most recently co-host of the Brown Bag podcast. Super excited and always grateful to share space with you, Carmen, and any endeavor. And super excited about our two guests that we have today. So yeah, as far as what's bringing me life lately, I will share that I actually taking a qigong class. So for me, it's about slowing down and making space to breathe. Similar to what you all have said, there's so much going on, and just finding that time to really slow down and take a deep breath. So yeah, it comes with the territory as we age. So learning about qigong and the practice of qigong. So yeah, so.
Okay. Yeah, it's me, Carmen. I don't know. The thing that's given me life today is like podcasts that help me process very disturbing shows. So I'm watching White Lotus right now, which is a little something, a little lot. And I'm also catching up on Yellow Jackets. So those two shows are very hard watches, very good, but hard watches. And so I'm listening to a couple of podcasts from the Ringerverse, which my colleague Andrew Henry kind of introduced me to, and they do really, really good analysis of each show. So I feel like, okay, I get to process this crazy thing that I just watched. So it's definitely giving me life these days. All right. So we'll go ahead and get going with our questions, and Pedro's going to kick it off.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think that one of the reasons that I was excited about today is about being together and having a plática, right? Plática is a word in Spanish that means conversation. And I think that being together in community, I think it's also something that brings all of us life. And I think that any project that involves us being together, learning from each other, I was like, yeah, I'm there. So when Carmen asked me like, who do we want to invite to our first podcast together, thought about both Erica Sanchez, director of HSI, and of course Diana Rueda, coordinator of the Dream Center. So I think today we really want to learn more about your work, about your journey here to Chabot. And let's start there. I think that we get busy here at Chabot. We're all doing so many things, wear so many hats, that sometimes we forget, like, hey, where did you start it? Or what brought you to Chabot? And who are your mentors? Or however you want to take this conversation. So maybe I'll invite either one of you who wants to share more about your professional journey, what brought you to Chabot. Yeah, we'll start there.
I can go first. So my journey first started when it was instilled in me that education was important, and that we're here for a better life, right? A better standpoint than what our previous ancestors probably had. So I graduated. Well, first off, I was raised in the Bay Area, Newark, California. So I graduated from Newark Memorial, and then I transferred to Ohlone. That was my neighboring college, and I didn't know how to drive then. So I was like, I'm gonna just go to Ohlone for now. And then I realized that I needed a support system to get through this journey. I'm first generation to go to college and graduate from college. So I think that I was lucky to have guidance throughout all of my educational years. And I joined Puente. Puente really helped me build like a network where I found students that have similar barriers or similar experiences, and we came together and to have success. Then I transferred to East Bay, CSU East Bay, and I also joined Ghana. So I wanted something similar that I experienced at Ohlone to have over at East Bay. So I joined Ghana's, and Ghana's is a transfer program. And that was another place where I also found a networking system, right? Where we could support each other, push through together, because sometimes we wanted to give up. We would have little breakdowns. And so we were there for each other. And we all graduated and back in like 2018, I want to say. So this was pre-pandemic. And I realized that my job at that time had nothing to do with what I wanted to do, which was like something similar to like social work, psychology. So I got an internship with La Familia, and right after graduation, they hired me full time. So I have experience working within the reentry population, which are also known as formerly incarcerated. And then I got myself into the mental health field and substance use field. So it's like they all mesh together. We realize that communities are experiencing both, not just one. And those are like some of the big barriers that our community experience. And after that, I got to Chabot. So about 9 months ago, I started here at Chabot, and I started working with the undocumented population. With La Familia, I also worked with the undocumented population, and I saw that there was a huge need there too, especially because they all have other intersectionalities, right? They're people of color, they're not bilingual, they're striving to get through, and to their unfortunate, experience, they also dealt with incarceration. And some of those are undocumented. So it was a struggle seeing that, the people that you might have grown up with, you see their faces are struggling in this. It really got to me. And I know that, everyone makes mistakes. And so that's the other thing that I believe in is second chances. And so we were able to, as a team, provide them with second chances there at La Familia. And so me being a student myself and, also going through the struggles of not having a support system and working for it myself, I decided, I think Chabot was the next step for me. I think to mesh my experience with La Familia and my personal experiences of community and networking and having that support system, I was like, this is my next step to help students feel the same way that I felt when I was in school. And so that's where I am right now. I help students, change their classification from out of state tuition to in state tuition. And so, and to know that for some people don't really think of it because it doesn't, necessarily apply to them. But once you see that balance, like a $5,000 for like 4 classes, we freak out. So sometimes they don't know where to go, and so I always tell like students, like, if you know of anybody else who's dealing with this, please send them my way so that I can help assess the situation. So I do a lot of AB 540 petitions and residency reclassification, so that's what the majority topic of the Dream Center is, but also to bring support within the undocumented population, especially because there's so much unknown right now in the country. And so we provide a safe space for them to come in and talk about what's going on. And that's what the Dreamers Club is for as well, to talk about current policies, updates, and how we can support each other and the student body.
Yeah. I'll go next. So I guess my story, I always start with my parents. My parents are both from Mexico. My dad's from Jalisco. My mom's from El Paso, Juarez. And they both ended up in the Bay Area. My mom actually came to Hayward when she was 9. Her family came here in the early 70s. And my dad came to the Bay Area around that same time. They met, they got married. And even though I was born in Oakland, raised in East Oakland the first 5 years, my grandparents always lived in Hayward. We moved back to Hayward when I was 6. So I really do claim Hayward as my, my home turf. And I've just been here so long. Went to school in Mount Eden, was a part of Puente there. And I guess I should backtrack a little bit. Growing up, I've always been very curious. I've always enjoyed, I always share this story, that growing up, I loved things like the X-Files, Strange Universe, Unsolved Mysteries, obsessed with space aliens, also really terrified of space aliens, that I would be abducted one day, that I would turn on the light in my bathroom and there would be a little green man there to take me away. And I also stayed up late to watch the news. I've always been really interested in the news and politics. So I was 5 years old. It was a Friday night, probably, watching the 10 o'clock news with Elaine Corral and Dennis Richmond. And Elaine Corral tells us that there's a huge influx of illegal aliens coming into the country. And so my little 5-year-old brain freaks out because I thought we were being invaded by space aliens. My mom was in the kitchen cooking chicken at 10 o'clock at night. Yes, she was cooking food. And I ran to her and I said, Mom, you told me aliens weren't real. Why are there a bunch of aliens coming into the country? And when she looked at me, she had to say, Mija, they're not talking about those kind of aliens. They're talking about us. Mm-hmm. And when she said that, even as I was 5 years old, I knew she wasn't talking about her, who's more white passing and is a citizen. She was talking about like my dad's family. And I don't know how I knew that at 5 years old, but kids pick up on things pretty easily, I think. And so I remember just feeling like a gut punch of like, why would they call us aliens? Like, we're not little tiny green men with big eyes, the kind that I would see on TV. And I just remember feeling really like hurt by that. I had a lot of feelings and it always stayed with me. And I also eventually got really into John Grisham novels, Time to Kill and all of those different things. I was reading that in like 7th grade. So in 7th grade, I decided I was going to go to the ACLU to be a civil rights lawyer, and that was going to be my path. And I got to high school and I took a class where we read Night by Eli Winslow and learned about the term dehumanization of what they did to Jewish people during the Holocaust. And that's when it clicked back what was happening when I was 5 and that feeling that I felt about the language that was being used. And so that was probably when I was radicalized and started to feel really passionate and seeing the connections between different communities as well. And as a high school student, I didn't take for granted my education. My dad, in a small town in the rancho outside of the pueblo, that wasn't able to go to school beyond 6th grade, but he's always been incredibly smart, really good with math and numbers. When he came to the Bay Area, it was to work to raise orchids, and he knew a lot about botany. In Mexico, he raised corn, and just so smart, would pass tests, knew things that people with bachelor's degrees didn't know that studied botany. And so I always knew that like if he had had the opportunity, he could have done so much more. And so I felt like I can't waste my opportunity. So that also added to, my feelings about things. And so as a high school student, I took dual enrollment classes here at Chabot. I took about 3 or 4 classes as a high school student. I went on to a 4-year, I went to UC Berkeley. And then I came back also as a UC Berkeley student to take a couple of general ed courses at Chabot College. And then I went on to be a college advisor at Mount Eden High School, my former high school. It was, I believe, during 2011 to 2013. And that's actually when DACA came to be. And I had friends who were undocumented at Berkeley where they had to apply to private grants and scholarships. They couldn't apply, with the California Dream Act that hadn't happened yet. But DACA came to be. And I remember my first year as a college advisor, it was just going to all the webinars, learning everything there was about DACA. What are the legal things, because I wanted to be a lawyer, right? So let me figure out what the legal things are. And then after those 2 years, I went to UC Berkeley to work in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions. And as an admissions officer, I also made it a point to learn about AB 540 and DACA and all the things, because there's a lot of back-end processes that Diana does here at Chabot, right? So learning how those things impact those communities was really important to me because we don't talk about it enough. And it's always important to me to normalize that and talk about it. I was there for about 10 years, and the position at Chabot for HSI director, I saw it. I thought it was time for a change, to come back home. And even as I worked at Berkeley, I always lived in Hayward, and just driving down Hesperian, seeing new buildings coming up at Chabot, seeing the mural come up outside of the event center, I was like, oh, what's that? What's that color that I'm seeing from Hesperian? Just being excited about, just seeing Chabot as a community member from afar. And also like as a student who had attended. So it really led me to come back to Chabot to be in my community and to realize that there was a lot of students at Mount Eden that I loved that we hung out with. And when I went to Berkeley, it just was not the same. It was very different. It was a culture shock also. Even though Berkeley's not that far from Hayward, it's a very big culture shock, and realizing like, oh, I felt like I didn't do enough to help bring my peers with me to Berkeley. Not that I needed to carry that burden. I realize that now as an adult, but also just how can I help bridge, communities and gaps. So that brings me here to Chabot, and I'm not just HSI director, but overseeing El Centro, which provides a lot of onboarding services, bilingual, English and Spanish. Just having a chance to meet with our student assistants on a regular basis, getting to meet other folks on the campus and plugging in and connecting whenever and wherever possible. So yeah, that's my journey.
Thank you, Erika. Thank you, Deanna, for sharing about your journey, as we said, and we're all happy to have you here at Chabot, and definitely both bring a lot of heart, a lot of comunidad to your work. And I'm curious what you're hearing from students, like right now with everything happening in the country with the executive orders. And I say this because you both spoke about building community, creating a safe space, and I think definitely El Centro, the Dream Center, create that space. But as we know, our students navigate outside of El Centro, and I think that here at Chabot, we're trying to create a safe space in the entire campus. So what can we learn from what you're hearing, so we as faculty and staff can also help create that safe space everywhere in the classroom, at the library, everywhere we.
For the Dream Center students, well, I also want to note that for the Dream Center, it's not just undocumented students that come in and hang out or need assistance, right? It's anybody who might need like basic needs. So all special programs and centers have like special needs, are like water, snacks, toiletries, right? So I feel like lately there's been less foot traffic than fall semester, and I think that that could be a mixture of everything, but also to acknowledge that there's fear within the students, right? Mixed status family, undocumented students, and even like family members are coming into the office, and neighbors that are coming and asking like, can the student come in? They're fearful of coming in, like what's going on here on campus. And that brings me to an experience with somebody's neighbor. At first, I thought it was a student. So they were saying that, like, I'm this person's neighbor. They just came to California and they want to come back and do, come and get their education here, start over. And that they were fearful to come on campus because they didn't know what to expect, but also like what the process was to enroll them. So I think that that's some of the scenarios that's been happening within the Dream Center. Also, students are coming in and asking to see what the college is saying or what they're doing, and they want the college to say or do more, and they're saying that they trust Chabot College. That there's a lot of platforms, there's a lot of sources out there saying a lot of things, especially podcasts, and anybody can do a podcast, right? So there's a lot of misinformation and a lot of fearful information out there. So students are saying that if Chabot College does something, then they trust the source, right? They will trust Chabot College. And other situations as well where like mixed status families are coming to question, like, do we submit taxes? Do I apply to financial aid? And the answer is yes. And so CSAC, it's the Dream Act application, has been very vocal about accepting mixed status families. So if a student is a U.S. citizen or a U.S. resident, right, and they don't feel comfortable submitting the FAFSA, they can go ahead and submit a Dream Act application, because they're fearful of releasing parents' information. And so those have been some experiences that, or student experience that they're facing. And so it's a little bit of a struggle, I think, particularly for me, because we don't all have the answers either. And so I think that I have been really reliant on like all those statuses and updates that CSAC or FAFSA is releasing, the lawyers that's partnered with community colleges here in California as well. So I know that legal immigrant legal defense has been really good about providing monthly updates and holding webinars. And so Chabot College is partnered with East Bay Community Law Center as well, so it's through Find Your Ally. And so all community colleges and CSUs will offer free immigration services to students and faculty as well. So it's not just the students. So I've been heavily reliant on those, and so we just hosted a Know Your Rights workshop as well, and Undocu Ally. So an Undocu Ally is basically another workshop where we talk about anything related to like immigration or what the processes are here at Chabot College, and we provide that to faculty, administrators, other high schools are nearby Chabot, but also allies. Anybody who identifies as an ally, and so who wants to keep helping out students as well. So those are some things that the Dream Center has been experiencing lately.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And I think that some of the things that I've been hearing from students is kind of a mix. Some students, that I'm hearing from as well, they're looking to get information from a trusted source, and they understand that there's a lot of misinformation out there. So they're also looking to see if Chabot can provide some of that information, maybe perhaps through faculty or folks. There's also just more of an interest in knowing not just what's going on globally, locally here, nationally, but also an ignited interest in how does government work in the three branches of government. And even just hearing, there's monthly updates. It's really had to be weekly, sometimes daily updates with some of the things that were happening in January and February in particular. But it is kind of exciting to hear the students are getting more interested and being actively aware of like, I want to know, what can I do? Is this legal? What's not legal? What can we do? Like there's a feeling of what can we do now? And this impacts not just students who are undocumented, but other students as well. And we know when we talk about undocumented populations, it's usually the Latinx community that is the face of that. But we know it's not just the Latinx community who's under attack in this way, right? That it's a lot of different communities. And even the Latinx community itself is diverse. It's an ethnic group, it's not a racial group. So there's a lot of folks on campus, not just in the Latinx community, who want to know how to help, even if they themselves are not undocumented, and they want to know how they can support each other. So that's why we did Undocu Ally training during Flex Day, and me and Diana will connect with Katie and offer that again this semester for faculty and staff, but also we're looking to collaborate to do one specifically for students. And I know there's some trainings where we get into the minutia of all the legalities and this and that, but we also want some sessions that are more not necessarily, not everyone needs to know all of the ins and outs of the legal process, but understanding where to send students or how to connect them to proper resources and not spread misinformation as well. So yeah, we don't need everyone to be an immigration lawyer, but you should know where to direct folks to get that support. So, hearing from students, I think, is a lot less this semester. And so that also leads us to think about who are the voices we're not hearing from because they're not showing up to campus anymore because of the fear. There's a lot of fear in the community to leave their homes, to speak Spanish in some instances. I know Diana had shared with me some students from Dream Center have been told by their family members, to not speak Spanish, don't congregate with a lot of Latinx folks, don't make yourself a target. And so often communities have to learn how to operate in stealth mode and go under the radar. And that's really difficult to do right now. And we're seeing other people get caught up in it. There's no one way to look if you're undocumented, right? But people get profiled and you never know, right? Like, so there's been a mix of things, and I'm also just concerned about the voices that we're not hearing from because they're too afraid to speak out and speak up.
I love hearing from both of you just how much the students are like interested in civic engagement and like wondering what they can do. And then also just the piece around information, because I feel like as faculty, those are like a couple of things that we can help students with, right? Like we can show them how to find out who their congressman is or their senator and, show them how to write them and can give them lists of like credible, news outlets. And we can talk to them about how do you identify a credible source, right? I mean, I think those are all things that as faculty we can definitely do to empower our students. But I was wondering, from both of you of just like this piece around fear and like how do we because the truth is there's like more of us than them, right? There's like actually more of us that, and I mean just a broad alliance of people that don't agree. I think most Americans don't agree with what's going on. I think there's more of us that disagree. But if we're like kind of scared and we're not speaking out and we're, flying under the radar, it's like, how are we gonna change things? So I'm just curious as to like, how do you think we can alleviate the fear or empower, our undocumented students to like speak their truth through the fear?
That's a great question. And honestly, it's really going to be, like you said, it's the numbers. And I think a lot of folks are waiting for someone else to be the first one, and then someone else will do something, and someone else, and it'll lead to more, right? And I think we've seen that a lot in history too, where, someone's waiting for someone else to be the first one. And I think in order to have people to feel safe enough to speak out, they need to know and feel that that someone's going to have their back, that someone's going to back them up. And that needs to come from top to bottom, right? Mm-hmm. From their peers, from their faculty, from instructional staff, I should say, from counseling, from student services to administration, to the president and the district, right? Like that everyone is going to have the students back. And also there's a lot at risk when you put yourself out there like that. When you draw a lot of attention to yourself. I mean, we see what's happening with the graduate students on F1 visa holders in Ivy League colleges. Literally people's lives are at stake of being deported to a country that perhaps won't even accept them, of being sent to a supermax prison in El Salvador, where they're known for human rights violations. So there's so much at stake, but that's why that need for community and coming together and support is so crucial. And we need to have people from different layers, right? It can't just be like, yes, we need lawyers. We need people who can also support families. Like, we need people to support the academics. What if students are dropping late classes because they don't feel safe coming to class anymore? What is the policy and procedure then? It really takes a village. It takes a community to be able to feel brave enough to do that. Or how do we find ways to collaborate and come from our different parts of campus and life and think creatively of how can we have stories shared without putting that person necessarily in the spotlight? Because I also think movements can't just be about individual people. They have to be about the people. Right. And so often we have these figureheads who kind of take on that mantle and can be knocked off a pedestal. No one's perfect, but how do we come together and accept imperfection and accept that this is a community effort? We can't just wait for a hero to come in and save us. We are our own heroes, right? And so I think there's a lot, and it's not one person's lift. It's everyone's lift. And so I think what I'm going to do, as a Centro's director is commit to wanting to collaborate with folks across campus, utilizing our space, working with our staff to offer space to faculty who maybe want to do a teach-in, who, want to get the students involved. If there's any faculty who want to talk about the three branches of government, who want to talk about immigration, who want to talk about the history about immigration and how policing and policing of bodies have happened on this soil. There's so much, but it takes a community. It can't just be one person, one group. And I will say that I'm really enthused to hear that. I've heard from other folks in other groups, affinity groups, who want to support in that effort. And so I think it's just about us coming together, and it's about people actually putting in the work, and committing to doing that work and keeping it sustained.
I think that there's definitely a lot more fear now as we're watching the news, how international students are getting arrested for standing their ground, right, for having free speech and coming back, and there's consequences to that. And put this into perspective that some of these students, some of these people have escaped their country for these same reasons. They thought America was going to be a land of opportunity, right? Free speech. And now we're in the similar situations as those countries that we hear about in the news. And it's very triggering to watch those videos, especially the one that happened this week about how that Turkish international student was approached. And it's not even how it's the way that she's being approached, right? It looks like she's being kidnapped. And I think that those are new fears that we get to think about every day, like new added things onto us. And so, like Erica's right, we need to come together, and it's a collaborative thing, it's a collective thing, but we need to be strategic about it. We need to be very sensitive on how we move and what we do and what we plan, especially because we are Chabot employees, Chabot staff. And we need to be able to provide that support and resources to students, but in a very strategic way where we're not putting anybody at risk. Because that's the main thing right now. And we're seeing that it's not just undocumented people, it's US citizens, it's green card holders, it's, like Erica said, they're being sent to Quantico or to the Salvador prison, and it's a lot of racial profiling. That's something that we can't deny, and so it's affecting everybody because of racial profiling. And so that is another fear that I think that a lot of people are experiencing, even like probably within families. And so I've been hearing that lately, right? Like they're putting themselves on a travel ban. They're not going to go and travel for the holidays anymore because they're fearful of them getting investigated when they're doing nothing wrong. But that's what we're hearing in the news, and so that's what's being passed on through words. So I think that if we're hosting more on DocuAllies, like Erica said, we're not going to be sticking to like laws. We're going to talk about like how we can support each other, and like Carmen said, like know what sources are going to be reliable and what's going to be misinformation. So I think it's a collective thing where we all come together. And so I've had the honor of getting that support already, from El Centro, from Student Senate, from Student Life. And so I think that we need to organize strategically in how we want to support our students.
So true. Thank you, Deanna and Erica. And I think you've given us so much food for thought and truly inspiration in terms of the work that you do. And I think I also agree it's a collective effort. And I think that I do want to uplift and highlight the work that's being done also as a college. The task force that our president, Dr. Cooks, has called for safety and inclusion. I think that's huge. Faculty Senate's working on reaffirming resolution to remind students that this is a safe and sanctuary campus. So I think it definitely needs a big lift from the college, and be on the lookout for Ally April. And I can have Carmen talk more about the importance of allyship, because I think that it's what's going to take for sure. So I can pass the mic to Carmen.
Yeah, we are hoping to put on a ally up with democracy, and have some speak out. So maybe a good place for students to come and share their stories or just their feelings about how they're feeling, about what's happening. I think we're hoping to put together like a panel of professors to talk about the branches, just to kind of clarify, how government works, what does fascism mean, why our democracy is so precious. I think there's just so much language out there that students don't necessarily even know what these words mean, right? Or how this all works and what we can do to try to protect our democracy. So we're hoping to get that going.
How we
Do
can
we,
support, Carmen.
what do you say?
Let us know how we can support and collab with it too.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. It was so good to have you two on the show today. And there's like so much more to say and so much more to think about. And I'm sure that we'll, be continuing these conversations in the future. But we always like to end the Brown Bag podcast with our exit ticket. And this is just an opportunity for you to share something that you recommend to our listeners. So it could be connected to this topic, or it could be just anything that you think would be good for people to try or do. Does anybody want to go first?
I can go first.
Awesome.
Just to kind of stick to our topic from earlier about books, it's just something I've been saying over and over again, is that we're living in Animal Farm is happening. Animal Farm is a book by George Orwell. So I recommend taking the chance to read it. It's a pretty short book, but reading that, and then if you're more into movies, watch the movie Ant, because it does talk a lot about people power as well. So I think those would be my two suggestions to watch during these times, or to read.
What was the movie?
Ants?
Ants?
Yeah, like the bugs. Ants.
Oh, okay. I remember that. I thought that's what you said.
Yeah.
That's right. Where wasn't there some bug that was like bullying the ants or something? And yeah, they had to come together.
And he has this whole speech about like how, one nut won't hurt you, but if you have 500, think about malicious compliance too. If we're inundating the system, how can they get us all? Anyways, let me know.
Yeah, I love it. Cool.
For me, so I signed up for salsa lessons. So I think that we need to also think about our mental health, mental wellness, right? Finding hobbies or finding something to do to distract yourself from this reality. It's hard to sometimes, but we need to also keep ourselves sane in order to help others, right? How can we help each other if we're not doing okay ourselves? So that's what I'm doing, is what I'm trying to find more hobbies that I can physically, do and distract the mind, distract the soul. So that's my take.
I can go next. I can build on what Deanna said. I think that I'm a big believer also in find ways to unplug, and for me, it's usually being out in the backyard. We're getting ready for our spring garden. We have a little bit more space now in our house, so for me, that's if you have a space, you have the opportunity to join community gardens. I think getting outside or even just for a walk, I definitely am a big fan of that. So that would be my 2 cents for today.
Well, I was thinking about, kind of when you were talking, Diana, about people leaving their country and coming to America because they were like escaping, right? The type of government that we seem to be headed towards. And I think this is a book that I taught for a long time. It's called A Different Mirror, A History of Multicultural America by Ronald Takaki. And I think it's a really good primer for like just multicultural history in America. And I think especially because it really shows that like America has always tried to exclude people from civil rights and from equal opportunity. And I think particularly for folks that are coming to America, when I teach this, my students are shocked. They're just like, I didn't know that like America has been pretty messed up to everybody. So I think it's a good book to read just to understand the history of oppression in America and that it's never been all that it seems. And I think it's an important to have that knowledge as we are trying to strategize and organize
Right.
so that we can really understand what we're up against. So I definitely recommend that book. And just like building your libraries again, because we don't know what's going to happen with all the books.
You're right. So I will have to start or focus on reading hard physical books.
Well, you don't have. I mean, like if you get Libby, you can really like read it on the tablet. Like I read a lot of books on my phone. Just from the Libby app. It's like this app, and then you put like in your library card, and it'll give you access to ebooks all, at your local library. And you can just read it on your phone. And they give you access to audiobooks too.
And we promise we're not sponsored by Libby.
What'd you say?
I promise we're not being sponsored by Libby.
I know. I love Libby so much.
Yeah,
I discovered it during pandemic.
We're sponsored
Sponsor us, Libby.
by all the public libraries in America.
But Deanna, you were saying like if they're taking stuff out of the library, right? Like
Yeah. If they're going to start restricting, we have to build on hardcover books.
For sure. Yeah. That's a good point.
True. That's very true. Yeah. All right.